I think if Ireland were taking you lot on at the Aviva, I think they would have a much better chance than in Chicago.
Who's got the worst schedule here? I think Australia have got it. And also when you look at the Springboks versus France, is that the de facto World Championship playing out for 1 and 2 rankings?
This will be an absolutely titanic match. I have no doubt about that. Brassy won't be messing around with that selection.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, Martin Devlin, Lockmore, and our great old mate from the Times Online, Rugby Pass, Chris Jones, out of London, joins us. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got autumn internationals, mate, for the next few weeks. How good?
Fantastic, especially as you lot are going to the scene of that great debacle in Soldier Field. So we're all on tenterhooks for that. We wish you really well because, as you know from your record, you playing on neutral venues is not a good sight. It's not a good sight at all.
Are the Northern Hemisphere battle ready for these internationals, Chris? Because the Southern Hemisphere nations have all come off what everyone's calling the greatest rugby championship played. And so we're probably more battle-hardened.
Absolutely. That was a fantastic championship. And for the 4 home unions, very different situations. Obviously, Wales is a basket case. Jack Morgan has just been talking about the fact that his region is likely to be dismantled by the Welsh Rugby Union when they go from 4 to 3. So you can imagine that's meant that all those Ospreys players are feeling really, really well up for these matches, knowing that they could have their livelihoods ended very shortly. So Wales, you push them to one side, okay, they're just not going to be able to play at the level you want to mentally and possibly physically as well. England are looking very interesting. They're picking a lot of young players, some of whom will appear out of position later in the autumn internationals. They're starting against Australia with a team based a lot on that team that won in Argentina because they know they haven't got the time together. And that's where you guys from the South are well ahead of us. I mean, the All Blacks, 10 tests into this? Ireland, we don't know what we're going to get from Ireland. So he's gone back, as you would expect him to the old Blacks. So a lot of well-known faces in that Ireland team. And Scotland looking good. Again, their clubs have been okay in the URC. But the big question is, has their coach, Gregor Townsend, created a problem he doesn't need to create? Because he's taken on this job with Newcastle Red Bulls, where he's going to be their consultant, which is very nice because obviously Red Bull are worth billions. But at the same time, if his Scotland team start to underperform, and the critics are going to say, well, why are you spending so much time helping an English Premiership side? So there's lots of backstories going on and plenty of opportunities for you guys to expose them.
Looking at this Grand Slam tour for the All Blacks, Ireland, Scotland, England and Wales, is England the most dangerous opponent to you?
Yes, because you're not playing Ireland in Dublin this weekend in the howling wind and rain, which is what it's going to be. It's not going to be pretty nice. It's not be very good conditions at Allianz, otherwise known as Twickenham, for the Aussie game. But yeah, I think if Ireland were taking you lot on at the Aviva, I think they would have a much better chance than in Chicago. And yeah, everybody says, "Oh, if there's millions of Irish expats there." Yeah, but it's not that intensity you get at the Aviva. And so yeah, I would have thought Reds to be very happy playing away from Ireland at the moment.
Is it a real Grand Slam in your mind if we're not playing Ireland and Ireland?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes, absolutely. When you look at the results in many years to come, and if you lot have racked off all 4, it will be a hell of an achievement. It will be an amazing achievement, particularly as England are 3rd in that list. Obviously, it tails off a bit with Wales 4th. But we know there's going to be injuries for every team competing in these autumn internationals. And the fact it's going to go Ireland, Scotland, and then England. The ABs could be in a few injury problems by then. England have got a huge number of players, a number of whom are not going to be playing in that first game. And, they are looking like they've got the sort of strength in that will cause problems for the very best teams in the world. And of course, this whole series of matches is tied into the rankings for the World Cup. And at the end of November, we will know who the top 6 are. And that, they will go into those 6 pools and breathe a huge sigh of relief. And obviously, at the moment, it's South Africa yourselves, Ireland, France, England, and Argentina, which means that for Australia, Scotland, even Fiji, there's lots of opportunities, and the Fijians are going to be dangerous in the matches they've got as well. So lots going on in this autumn international series, not just a Grand Slam.
It's the talk. A lot of talk down here about being wary of Scotland, about maybe this is Scotland's time because, it has happened with Argentina and Ireland. We had 100-year records of not losing to those teams. We've lost a number of times to each now. And is this Scotland side capable, do you think, given where they're at the moment, given the fact, as I said, that we're battle-hardened and we're not a bad All Black side. We had a terrible second half against South Africa. We dropped our pants terribly against Argentina in that second test. But overall this year, we've only lost twice. The South Africans have also lost twice. We've beaten them. We didn't do that last year. We've just beaten Australia a couple of times. I mean, if you put it all together, we're not a bad side. We're not as good as we have been in the past, sure, but we're not a bad side. Is Scotland good enough to beat us?
Well, look, Scotland are starting off against the USA. Now, yes, they got the World Cup in 2031, and we all want to help the USA, but preparation to play the All Blacks, I don't think so. And what you have with Scotland is you have a bit like Australia. You've got a very good first 15, but if any of those guys get injured, and they've got some injuries at the moment to both their wingers, Graham and Van der Merwe, then it doesn't look the sort of threat it could be. And amazingly for Scotland, their major threat is the backs. It used to be they could put out a really aggressive back five. Now they've got a really good back line, obviously led by Finn, who's been playing really well for Bath this season. And so Scotland are very dangerous. If they can win enough ball, and they've got a good pack, but again, if they get a few injuries, they will be vulnerable. And of course, they also have that problem of the weight of expectation because they don't regularly beat the top teams. And that's that's the hump they've got to try and get over.
Who's got the toughest schedule, do you think? I look down, okay, we've got the Grand Slam. Australia have got England, Ireland and France, who we played last year and couldn't beat all three of those. South Africa have got France coming, Italy, Ireland and Wales. So a couple of questions about that. Who's got the worst schedule here? I think Australia have got it. And also when you look at the Springboks versus France, is that the de facto World Championship playing out for 1 and 2 rankings? Is that how that match is viewed up where you are?
Well, in terms of difficulty, I would put New Zealand as having the most difficult series because of the frequency of quality matches and the fact that you could argue the weakest one is right at the end. I would then say Australia would come in with the next toughest assignment, and the South Africans who start off at Wembley against Japan. They intersperse matches. They go from Japan to France, then they go to Italy, then Ireland, and then finish off with Wales on a weekend, which is outside everybody else's internationals. They're flogging themselves for 5 matches, which of course they are the big sales pitch at the moment. If you want a rugby match, just ask the South Africans to turn up, and Rassel brings one of his many
squads. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he's quite happy. He probably breaks 2 on the same day. You probably put up with that. But I would say that New Zealand with the Grand Slam, with the mental pressure, the physical pressure of achieving that, would be the toughest assignment this autumn. And England are going to be waiting their third match. As I said, it'll be a fantastic match, a great occasion with a completely sold out Twickenham. And we will see where both of them really stand in terms of you guys coming away from home and winning, and England being able to stand up against one of the top 2 teams in the world and deliver. And they've got some really interesting young players coming through. You've probably heard about this guy, Noah Kaluri, who scored 5 tries in his last one game for Saracens, who at 19 has been thrown straight into the squad. And then you've got Tommy Freeman, the Lions wing, who's going to be playing at centre against Australia. And then a couple of great, exciting back row players in Guy Pepper, and who's been likened to McCall, by the way. And then Henry Pollock, who we expect to see on the wing at some point of this autumn international series, just as we expect to see Ben Earl inside centre. So that the Rassie Erasmus, let's see what happens if we do this, seems to have caught Steve Borthwick's attention. And so we're going to have some interesting selections there.
Well, this South Africa side playing France, I just can't get my head around the fact that every test is an experiment for a World Cup in 2 years' time. And look, 2 years' time takes care of itself. These matches are important. They are meaningful. There are points available here, as you say, for the top six. And that is really important, even though perhaps the first 4 or 5 nations might be logged in there. And then next year we get the Nations Cup or the Nations League, okay? And so these matches, they're going to count for actual points. But also just in terms of the psychology of it, the South Africans chest puffed out and they have this aura of invincibility, even though they have lost twice this year. They don't want to actually front up against France and lose that match, do they? Tell me that these are really important matches on each of these weekends. They're not just, we'll throw these guys in or throw these guys in, or we've got making excuses already about trying to actually broaden our squads and things. That just talk just drives me crazy. If that's what you think of Test rugby, well, don't watch the bloody thing in that case. What's the point of it?
Yeah, that's why it's interesting that certain teams are playing, Scotland, USA, South Africa, Japan, and then you get to the real stuff. And France have named their squad. Unfortunately, Dupont's not ready yet, so he won't be pushed in early. They just lost Jalabert and Romain Taufeina, which is a big loss. But they brought in some young players from Toulouse who've been ripping it up again, and so they will have a really strong team. And you say, well, Dupont's missing. They've got Luku and they've got Nolan Le Garac, the guy who was at Racing last year, who's this year is playing brilliantly for La Rochelle. And so they've got world-class players at 9. And they've got Entomac at 10. They've got some really good-looking players. And they are in teams playing some outstanding rugby in the top 14. So this will be an absolutely titanic match. I have no doubt about that. Rassi won't be messing around with that selection. And France certainly aren't, because they need to prove to themselves that without Dupont, they can continue to be an effective unit.
Because, the Lions were largely unimpressive, let's be honest about it. They just about got undone by an Australian side. Talk about them being the greatest side ever. Look, but those players, have they had enough of this kind of the quality of the rugby that they need going into all of these matches? You've only just started your club season over there. I know those Lions guys, they certainly, if you talk about battle hardened, had that. But there's a number of these players who haven't played international since the Six Nations. How does that affect all this?
Some guys haven't played at all. Tom Curry's on the bench against Australia, needed an operation to reattach the tendon that he played with missing from his hand. And so he will come on against Australia not having played a single minute of rugby. The rest of the Lions, the English Lions, had 3 weeks off before they were allowed back into playing. So they're not that long into the season. So yes, there will be some rustiness in terms of combinations, and which is why I think it's probably why Borthwick's gone down the road he's gone down. He's picked the front row that played against Argentina, not the front row from England that went on the Lions tour.
Right.
And so you can say, well, why are they doing that? Well, he wants combinations, and he's trying to ensure that this team, first up against Australia, isn't disconnected, that there's enough of that feel-good factor from Argentina and the game in USA, which means they can get through any sort of initial problems. And, we've seen some good stuff from the Australians. Don't forget where they went to Ellis Park and did something remarkable.
Yeah.
And if they can get their number one team out, which is debatable because they're always picking up so many injuries, and the team that stuttered and was so unimpressive in Japan will not be the team that runs out of Twickenham. So we might see what they really look like then. And it will be an exciting match because England will want to show that they can play really good rugby, and the Aussies will want to prove that Ellis Park and other results they had weren't one-offs.
You and me have been around a long time to remember the first Grand Slam tour win by the All Blacks in 78. Then, of course, 84 when the Wallabies did it, and that really catapulted them into the international rugby's top tier, did it not? Do these Grand Slam tours still mean a lot? And is there an excitement about this?
Some guys haven't played at all. Tom Curry's on the bench against Australia, needed an operation to reattach the tendon that he played with missing from his hand. And so he will come on against Australia not having played a single minute of rugby. The rest of the Lions, the English Lions, had 3 weeks off before they were allowed back into playing. So they're not that long into the season. So yes, then there will be some rustiness in terms of combinations, and which is why I think it's probably why Borthwick's gone down the road he's gone down. He's picked the front row that played against Argentina, not the front row from England that went on the Lions tour.
Right.
And so you can say, well, why are they doing that? Well, he wants combinations. And he's trying to ensure that this team, first up against Australia, isn't disconnected, that there's enough of that feel-good factor from Argentina and the game in USA, which means they can get through any sort of initial problems. And, we've seen some good stuff from the Australians. Don't forget where they went to Ellis Park and did something remarkable.
Yeah.
If your lot can pick up a Grand Slam 2 years out from the World Cup, I mean, one, it'll cement Razor's position, and the doubters will have to say that is some achievement.
Yeah.
Well done. If they don't, then those little voices will continue saying, "Is he got it quite right? Has he got the combinations right? He seems to have finally found somebody in the centre with Geordie, who was obviously giving lots of inside information on the Irish players that we'll be playing against. So little bits and pieces coming together to help Razor in that sense. But the Grand Slam is still something to be. Those teams you mentioned, they come off the list very quickly, don't they? You know the dates because those dates stand out, because this is such a difficult thing to do. And you can say, well, we play each other so often now, we've lost the real sort of edge to it. Well, no. If you come up here and beat the 4 home unions, then that is a serious marker to put down just before the draw from the World Cup. And there's no getting away from it that, end of November and then a January draw is going to be a massive focal point for rugby.
Are the All Blacks going to do it?
I think they'll get 3 of the 4.
Oh, sod. Who do we lose to?
England.
Okay, that's the most difficult assignment.
Absolutely. By then, England will have their guys. Tom Curry by then will play 2 international matches, which would be enough for him to be that some marauding beast of a player who would love going head-to-head with Ardy Surveyor again. That will be a fantastic clash.
DSPN.